Don't quit me, Fred.
Now, good notion to pepper to start with.
Yeah, that's the wrong thing. Of all the things you said, Pam,
Well, I'm an elderly lady.
Okay.
That's what I am.
That's fine. That's all you have to tell me. Okay. When you were growing up, what what was the first type of transportation that y'all used when you were growing up?
But when I was growing up, we used horses, buggies, and wagons. That was our transportation. And then I lived to see that we didn't have a bridge to cross the river when we moved to the valley. We'd go to Scottsboro shopping, things like that, trade with that. And we'd have to cross the river on a ferry boat. And in stormy weather, sometimes you'd get over to Scottsboro and then you wouldn't be able to get home that night because the river would be rough. And the whitecaps on the river would be high, would go over your boat and would danger the ferry boat sinking. So we'd have to spend the night in Scottsboro and then come back out the next day. And they used to carry the mail to Scottsboro, you see, we'd buy Star Route, and they'd have to cross the mail. Sometimes we wouldn't get our mail regular because it would be held up a day or two. It'd be 2-3 days before they'd be in the stormy weather like we had the other day during the storm. That river would be rough. And so they'd have to spend the night over there and miss that. But it was carried by horse and buggy from Pisgah. We lived in Pisgah at that time, and it was carried by horse, buggy, or by horseback. Sometimes they wouldn't take the buggy, they'd just throw the mail across right over if it was real where the water was up in the valley.
And so you got to see the first automobile. I mean,
Yes.
The first one that they had.
Well, the first automobile that was brought to Pisgah was bought Mr. Matt Wan, M.L. Wan of Pisgah, owned the first automobile. And, of course, I ran away when I got married. And Mr. Wan carried my husband and I to VIRGIE Chambers, carried us to Ida, and we got the horse and buggy in Ida and drove to Trenton to get so we could get the train to go into Chattanooga to get back.
Wow.
So that was the first automobile that was in Pisgah. So we didn't get off it. We got on at Sulphur Springs and then rode up to Trenton. We meant to get off. Everybody go to Trenton and get married, you see. So we didn't get off at Trenton. We was afraid that my father would have somebody over there to pick me up because I wasn't of age, you see, and he'd have somebody to pick me up and bring me home. So we decided we'd just ride on to Chattanooga. So we rode over to Chattanooga and just married Chattanooga.
So you've really seen a lot of change in automobiles.
Yes,
I've
seen a lot of change in transportation, and I've seen a lot of change in the roads and the way people live since I started out housekeeping and teaching and going to school.
What do we have now in our homes that we just take for granted every day?
Oh no, you have refrigerators and freezers and all kinds of electrical appliances and all we didn't have back when I was young. You see, we didn't even have electricity. See, I didn't have electricity till living in Dutton. I didn't have electricity in Dutton until about 1938, 36, 38.
I didn't realize it was that short time ago.
Yeah, that was right, you see. We just didn't have, you had to get the right of ways, you see, of people, and a lot of people didn't want electricity. They didn't want to change. They didn't want to give up the land. And they thought it would be kind of dangerous to put an electrical pole in the field because for the lightning's sake, they looked on that side, you see, safety. And then some of them didn't want it no way, and we had people that would not give sign of right of way for other people to have this, and they just buy the land and take it and give them so much money, and that was it, because the majority of the people wanted service. And So it's been an improvement all the way up. You see, we have this, nearly every home now has sanitary indoor toilets. They have a bathroom, the baths and things, and they didn't used to have that.
It's just been a major change.
Major change all the way around. Major change in the homes, major change in schools.
Well, when you were growing up, what did most women do? I mean, you know, what was their role in society, really?
Well, they wrote most of them, the majority of them. Now, we had a few teachers way back. We've always had a few teachers, you know, old maids and things that would be teachers. Now, that's it. But now, when they married, you see, they took the role of a housewife. And they lived just like, and they had to take care of the children. They helped if they lived on the farm. They lived to help and manage that. They didn't have a business career, you know, like we have today. But now today we have women that's in every phase of life, nearly, you know, that where men are working. They work the same thing. And the only objections I have about, I'm for women's rights, but I'm not for this live that goes along. I think we all can get along. I think we have our freedom and things like that. But I believe in if a woman is qualified, I think she ought to receive the same amount of pay and doing the same kind of work that a man does. I think she ought to receive the same amount of pay, and that's not yet a standard way of living.
No.
We've got to make some changes for that. And I don't object. I don't blame women for objecting. And for a company to hire a man and then pay him. I can give a good example of that. Had a lady that worked with crippled children, and she'd fit shoes for the crippled children in Decatur. And she had gone to school and learned all the trade and everything about it. You know, she knew all about how to fit shoes, knew all about that. She knew how to take care of the cripple, how to fit the braces and things like that. And then they wouldn't pay her the same amount of money as they would a man that was working in there with her. And she refused to work. She quit her job. And I didn't blame her for a bit. That because I think when you have somebody shoulder to shoulder, a man and a woman, and they do it identically the same work, I think she ought to get as much pay. That's why I like teaching, because if you're a teacher and you have a certain certificate, you get that same amount if you're a man or a woman. And I'm not prejudiced about the black. I always feel like a black teacher, if she's qualified in teaching, and she holds the same certificate that I hold, she should receive the same amount of pay, and that hasn't always been that way either.
Yeah.
They should have the same opportunity to work and improve themselves at the White House. And then we'd all have a better society.
It would be better.
Yes.
Did many women go to college then?
Well, not at first, but then they gradually began to come in. Now, see, I married, and I hadn't even finished high school. I was just a kid when I married. But after I married, and after my daughter was born, I decided that, and I always liked teaching. I always liked children, and I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. And they would hire me to be a substitute there at Pisgah. And it was known as Beeson Academy at that time. It wasn't Pisgah High School. It was Beeson Academy. And it was belonged kind of, it was connected with the Baptist school somewhere, somehow or another, because they named it Beeson Academy after the oldest family of educators that we had in Pisgah. That was the Beeson family. They had several of those people that were doctors and teachers and like that, you know, so they called it the Beeson Academy. And so I would substitute over there at Beeson Academy, would substitute with small, and I always loved that work. So I studied at home while I was taking care of a daughter. And I decided I'd start with take state examination. And I took state examination, And I passed. I got me a third grade certificate. Started at the bottom. A lot of people would start to the top and come down, but I decided, you have to crawl before you walk.
Mm-hmm.
So I started at the bottom, and I got a third grade certificate. But I never taught on third grade certificate. So then I went right back, and the next time that they had the examination for teachers, I took and got a second grade certificate. And then after I got my second grade certificate, I decided I'd take my first grade certificate, but I hadn't been out of school and hadn't had my geometry. That's what I failed on in my examination when I took for first grade. I failed geometry, so I said, well, I would let that defeat me. I'd just go ahead and start teaching on my second grade certificate, and I did. But they had stitching work out for Florence then, and I'd go teach all week. Every week I'd teach, and then on Saturdays they offered extension courses, and on Saturday I'd go to take this extension work, and I'd take this extension from Florence, and I got my certificate raised that way by taking extension, and then by going to school at Jacksonville, in the spring and taking 3 months work down there. And I finally got my high school diploma. I graduated from high school and got my high school diploma. Then I worked for my degree out of college, and I got my first 2 years off at Florence State Teachers College. Then I finished at Jacksonville with my 4 years.
Over a period.
Over a period of years, yes. I didn't get it just all at once. I just had to work. I had to teach and go to school and teach and go to school. And take extension work. So
even when you started teaching, you still had to have 4 years of college.
You didn't have to have. You have teachers you didn't have. You see, I was working toward my 4 years, but I didn't have my 4 years when I was teaching. And I taught in my first school was in a one teacher school, and I had 8th grades, 1 through the 8th. And I had children in school that was older than I was.
Oh.
I had several boys that were older than I in school, and girls too. And then I would manage. Now you want to know how you could manage today. The teachers grumble about having 25 pupils.
Right.
They just have too many pupils. Well, I can understand that. I'm from to have a small number of pupils. The fewer you have, the better job you can do. But you see, I had to have 8 grades, and I had to teach those classes every day because I had to see every pupil. Well, you can do a lot by letting your smart 8th grade, 7th grade, that help you with your first grade pupils, your second grade pupils. You can get a lot of help, but you've still got to oversee and supervise their teaching and their working a bit like that. So then my second year I moved over, and I was still a first grade. One teacher school, but my school it was a little improvement over my school that I had with my first. And I had grown boys that was older than I. And we just had a ball. We never had a better time in my life than I did that second year that I taught school. They would help me. They would help me with my work. I would play with the old ones, and the little ones would have playhouses and things like that for our playpen. Now, we'd have a recess. You don't have a recess anymore. You'd have recess, and they would get off and we'd play. Well, we'd play baseball because the older ones wanted to play baseball, and I'd play with them because if you manage and keep up with your old ones, the little ones will kind of keep up with themselves. It's like the mother hen and her chickens. Look after the ones like we did all the time. And so I really had a good time there. So my third year with that was, I went back to the first place where I taught because they wanted me to come back and promised to give me an assistant if I'd come back. And so it was 2 teacher schools in the second year, so I just had my she taught part. I took the little ones, the first ones. She'd help take. We just divided up grades from there, and enjoyed that year too. But then after that, I came to Dutton and started working with where they'd have just one grade, two grades. You see, worked from there, and I've worked 42 years in the school here at Dutton. 42 years.
You taught 44.
I've taught 49 years
49.
in all, but I was transferred. And then we got, back when I was teaching, we had trustees that had a lot of authority then. Our trustees just kind of a figurehead now. They don't use much, but if you did see just exactly like I've had trustees to come tell me that I want to teach them, but they didn't know anything about teaching, but I went ahead with my plan that I'd started on and with the plan that I had learned from my extension work and from in college and observing. You can learn a lot by observing others. If you see a good teacher, you can learn quite a bit from them. And I was always open for so I could improve my own method. If I saw somebody doing it better than I did, I always wanted to change. And so I feel like I've made a success with that because I've always tried to improve and improve as the education would move along. I try to move with it, you know. But there's certain things that's just fundamental, and the first thing, you've got to have love for children. If you're going to be a teacher, you've got to have love and dedicated for your work, and really give all you've got to that. Just live it day and night. I used to come home and when I was teaching first grade, and I'd want to tell everything that Johnny said and did at school, you know. And my husband didn't much like me to listen, bring me to school. He said, I want you to go to school and have school down there, and you leave it down there, and then when you come home, you just forget about that you have been in the schoolroom. Mm-hmm. But you know, that's hard to do, is to leave it down there, because you'll think about what you're going to do for Johnny the next day, and you're going to do this and do that. Wake up during the night and think, well, now tomorrow I've got to do this and check up certain things on Johnny. Old Susie about it, you know, to bring them up to standard. And, but my husband then went to work on the road, and he'd have problems with his road work, you know, and he'd go to tell me, and I said, just leave your problems on the road, and then we won't, I don't care a thing about road work. I wasn't interested in road, I was interested in teaching. So we came to an understanding that if we had problems, that we could really sit down and tell him if we needed to talk to somebody.
How many generations of one family have you taught?
Well, I know I have 3 generations, and I might have 4. I guess I could search around here, and I might find 4 generations that I taught.
I figured you had taught at least 3.
Yes, I have. And I'll say, well, I see these children now, these little children coming along, and I saw Bruce Pickett, this little girl, the other day, and I said, I want to tell you, I taught your daddy when he was in school.
Huh?
And the wife said, yes, I know. And I have had some, and I'm proud to say I've had some brilliant children in my room. Yes, I've had some brilliant children in my room. I've had doctors, lawyers, teachers, and that makes me feel real proud.
I know it.
And they want to know how I kind of managed to stay up and stay going, you know, and all. I said, well, I hear so much good about these children of mine, and I have thousands of them, you know. Mm-hmm. And I said, that just keeps me, when they get something good, it gives me a little lift that I've had a little part in their life. Mm-hmm. And that makes me feel good, so I can just stay boosted up all the time. And then when I have one that hasn't lived and hasn't come up to what I think they should have, it makes me feel a little bit down, or if they get into trouble, I bounce, I hit down, you know, for a little bit. But then I'll have something good along, and the good overshadows the bad. Mm-hmm. So I can stay up, just boosted up.
That's true in teaching, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
always.
true in teaching. That
Yeah.
certainly is.
Good always, if it's just one, it makes a difference.
Because a lot of people shy away from this. I believe in teaching physical fitness in the first grade, just like you do in the high school. And you have to teach hygiene. And I never would have let a child come to school and have rusty hands. I'd always mention to that child and tell him and tell the group, that I want them to have clean hands and a clean face. And I always kept a big mirror in the room, and I said, you just look at the mirror and see if you think you're ready to come to school this morning.
I remember that.
And so if the little boy and the mama didn't take the hint and didn't do it about the third or fourth grade day after I'd mentioned this, I would just go down to the lunchroom and get me some good warm water. And I always kept plenty of good soap at school. I always kept lotion at school. And I would wash those little old hands in that warm water. And then after washing, sometimes they'd be cracked open. I could understand why they didn't want to wash, because they'd hurt and bleed, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Cold weather, but I'd put that lotion on those hands every day to get them good and soft again, And then tell him, now, I want you to keep hands clean. I want you to wash them every day. And every morning I'd remember that child, and I'd always put that lotion on to help get those little hands healed up. And he would wash his face, right around his face, maybe a little, but all around his neck, and all it ever would have, he wouldn't be clean. And I just couldn't stand that. So I'd get him cleaned up real good, and after I'd get him cleaned up, he would always stay nice and clean. And then I always felt like it was my job to teach. I'd go to the lunchroom with my children, and I always felt like it was my job to teach them, after when we had a lunchroom, teach them how to eat and have manners at the table and sit down, And I'd take those children, first grade children, in there, and some of them I couldn't sit down to eat with them for about the first 6 weeks, because it kept me busy going up and down the aisle and showing them, what to do and tell them what to do. And they'd want to rake their food sometimes off on the table if they didn't want it, and I said, no, we just leave it on the plate, and get them like that, keep it straight. And so in about 6 weeks' time, I'd have those children where anybody could sit down at my table, and I could sit down and eat and enjoy them. And they would really enjoy eating, and I would enjoy eating, and then I'd see the progress that they'd made, because they could just clean off around their table, pick up their table, and pick up their plate and their box, and can't go right to the lunchroom window with it, and without any assistance. And I always managed, if how many children didn't have a lunch in my room when I went to the lunchroom, I knew how many didn't have a lunch, and then I'd always fix them a plate, carry them from the food that wasn't on, just like they had down there, because it said, if you want it, you eat it. If you don't want it, don't you bother. Mm-hmm. Then I'll take those plates, and I'd set those plates down there. I would always try to see that you can't teach a child that's hungry, and neither can you teach a child that's sleepy. Mm-hmm. And these mamas would see that this little boy, this little girl went to bed that night. They'd kept them up television. And next morning, sometimes I've had them have to take a nap when they come to school, because they had to get to sleep. You've got to get them where they're ready to listen when you want to teach them.
That's right.
So,
did you have any materials when you first started teaching?
I didn't have any materials. I had to buy my own materials.
You didn't get any money
then? Get any money for materials. No, and I would buy printing presses and things and make flashcards and things for my readers. And for my arithmetic, I'd make the flashcards for the arithmetic. Had to do all of that. And when our schoolhouse burned down here, you see, we had a school to burn about 19 I don't know just when it burned, but you remember it did.
I remember Mother.
And we built a new one. Well, equipment to get burned down there. I had my printing press, my charts, and my things like that, everything I had. But I know teachers today gripe kindly about they don't get this and don't get that, but I think about the older teachers when they worked, that they had to, if they had any equipment, they had to buy it themselves. They had to, and we didn't get much of a salary back then either, remember. Our salaries were low. And
Don't forget to bring in the IOUs.
oh yes, I taught for a while and they paid me in IOUs. Now the state of Alabama would give me an IOU, and then I didn't have any money because there wasn't any jobs. And my husband wasn't working at that time. And so I'd have to take the IOU and trade it where people would take it. And sometimes I'd trade that IOU for 50 cents on the dollar. You get to a place where you had to have some money. But now as far as living at home and having to have it like that, we had good eats. We ate well because we had chickens, cow. So you see, and vegetables and things. But you'd have to buy, the time was high, you'd have to buy a meal. And meal would be, you'd say like $1 a bushel.
Flour.
But you couldn't buy it where were you going to get the dollar? In the flour, we had to buy flour. Yeah, yes, we could manage meal, but we'd have flour to buy, sugar to buy. You'd sell eggs, butter, chickens, and get, that. And I'd be taking IOU. So our tax, we bought a place and we had our home and the tax come. It's got a statement from the tax collector that we owed so much tax, Well, we decided, my husband decided that we'd just wait and let them see if they'd sell the place. Alabama owed me for teaching, and I owed them for taxes. But they didn't do it. They just put up my place to sell it, So I had to change some IOUs into money so that we could get pay the taxes.
Did they have to pay it IOUs because the state didn't have any money at that time?
Yeah, that's right. They didn't have no money. They just didn't have no money, so they'd just give you an IOU. You go teach, and they'd give you an IOU, and then sometimes that they would redeem that, but now people couldn't hold those IOUs till the state got money. They had to live, and you'd have to trade those IOUs.
That is something I didn't know.
Well, that's what they did. That's some of the things that I went through while I was going to teaching.
And people think they have it bad now.
Yeah, think what they have now, think what they have, and I think our teachers kindly gripe, about they can't do this and they can't do that. And I thought, well, they just don't know what it's all about.
That's right.
They haven't gone through the hard rubs and the older teachers did.
That's
You
right.
get no plan.
That I wish the children didn't have. They have these little calculators, and they sit down and punch the calculator and add up their adding, and then put down the answer. Then they do that and do their multiplying, and that brain is just going dormant.
That's right.
Now they need to take those, just slip those under, forget that, and go back to some of the fundamentals of math. So when they get out in the world, they'll know how to figure and take care. You can add them to. I've had people that's working in office say they couldn't add, and they hold a responsible job. But they said if you would take this little calculator away from them, but they had just forgotten a lot of those things that they had. And they didn't use. You see, when you don't use this material, it gets away from you.
That's right.
So that's one thing that I would do for children in math, especially in the lower grades. I think they ought to learn fundamental, the foundation of math, even first, second, third grade. Now that's all right to do that play, but when you take it and use it to do all your work during the day, you're certain you're cheating yourself a little bit.
Was there any problem when you started teaching about the discipline? Did people complain or anything?
Oh, when I
you
started
disciplined
teaching,
your
we
children?
didn't have any problems because the fathers and mothers said, now, if you're having trouble with Johnny, you just let me know and I'll help you take care of Johnny. But I can see right now that they've let Johnny go a long, long ways now because you don't bother Johnny. If you have to get after him and cross him, the mama and papa come to school and say, you just hands off of Johnny. And that's one thing that's ruining our schools today is the lack of discipline. Now, we all know they say it'll ruin the personality if you step in and correct a child or have to discipline a child. But